Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show for October 10th, 2023. Jerry Teabag Hack here, Hockey Books and Storytellers on my mother's birthday. She's up in heaven bickering with my dad right now as we speak. So happy birthday, Mom. Love you. Miss you. Tone and I discuss a problem we have with hitting in the NHL and fighting. So enjoy that. And also we have part 2 of our interview with the incomparable Perry Lefko, author of 10 books with more coming. So enjoy the show, everybody. Okay, this is what drives me nuts about the NHL. I'll play this clip. Oops, that's not it. That's not it. Here we go. Oh. Letang gets hit, and the guy's got to fight. Crosby comes over and takes him out. Here's Doughty getting hit by Zach Rinaldo.
Yeah.
And then Zach Rinaldo's got to take on Dustin Penner.
That's an oldie.
Yeah. I mean, it's Dustin Penner, so you're not gonna get hurt too bad. But what drives me crazy is that, that Letang hit wasn't a bad hit. It was a perfectly clean hit. Why do you have to fight afterwards? Like, I don't understand this mentality where, okay, I did a good hit, now I got to fight. It didn't have it wasn't like that back in the day. You could, guys could hit Bobby Orr and nobody was going to, not right away. He wasn't going to have to fight. He might get hit later in the game. So, take the guy's number and take note and get him back at another time. Like, what do you think?
I completely agree that it's just every single good hit has to, there's a fight. You make a big hit, you're doing this immediately, and or just ready to brace somebody coming at you. Or like Fantilli. So the flip side to that, Fantilli got knocked on his butt last night. Adam Fantilli, second overall pick last night by TJ Oshie. Fantilli came over just over the red line, had his head down. Good, clean hit. Nobody from Columbus actually went at TJ, ironically enough. But I think I would say that the reason that happens more now, which I am agreement with you, that it's almost painful to watch, like, here comes the fight. But I think it's because fighting as such isn't really much of a part of the game anymore. So it's a way of showing solidarity with the team, with your teammates. Is like, after that, like, Crosby's not, they might have dropped the gloves, but I don't know if there's like big tilts coming as such, even compared to that Dustin Penner, where it's like, okay, the gloves are coming off, but you at least want to engage with the guy just to go. And is it Letang, veteran guy? It was like that Mark Stone hit a few days ago. That was an absolutely fantastically clean hit, and Vegas lost their mind and Stone lost his mind. Whether it's a preseason game or not, you got to keep your head up. And if you get a clean hit, the other thing is, here's a tip of the hat. You got me. I'll get you next time. As you were saying, you take that number. But yeah, it's painful in the sense, like, it's just, I think it takes away. But that's the only reason I can think, is that it's a way of showing your teammates that you're there for them in such a manner that you can't just automatically take that number later and just, you're going to drop the gloves, which, and as you said, is, or getting hit back in the day. It was just, I don't know when that changed, but I think it has to do with when fighting as such became less part of the game. But
well, I guess the intimidation factor is always a part of the game, and if you're gonna hit my guy, you're gonna pay for it. I can understand that mentality, but everybody wants instant gratification, and, like, I would like to see it go back the way it used to be, where you take the guy's number and then get him back later. Just don't stop the game, because make him pay right now. So
Like, look,
Anyway,
somebody else look for the big hit on him, another big clean hit. That
mhm.
that was that looking forward to that, or looking over your shoulder later on in the game. It's the same thing as like when a team gets a heavy forecheck on a team, those defensemen start to look over the shoulder and are nervous about that. Like you met when the Kings won those 2 cups over that 3-year period, their forecheck was like dominating, and it throws the D off their game. But you'd like to see
Yeah.
more big clean hits in the game too.
Yeah, that's part of it. I love the hitting aspect of it. Now there's a there's a perfect example was in NFL back in the day. Mike Harden from the Denver Broncos took out Steve Largent with a huge. Today it would be an illegal hit, but back then
Yeah.
it wasn't. I mean, Largent ended up breaking his face mask, and he lost a couple of teeth.
Jeez.
And so, but NFL, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't really go after the guy. So, the next game later in the season, because Denver and Seattle were in the same division back then, and so they played each other twice a year. And so the next game was in Seattle. Harden gets an interception, starts running it back, and Largent comes out of nowhere and just lays him out. And so, that is the classic example of what I'm talking about. Although, NFL and hockey are, the opposite. They're not quite the same, but that's the kind of deal. Now you could say that that's how the Steve Moore incident came around, was that they took his number and they, but that's a 1 in a million thing. That's how often has that happened where, somebody got very seriously hurt through something like that. So, that argument I think doesn't hold water to me. So, but I would really, really like to be able to see guys just take the hit, take the guy's number, let the game continue, and keep it going. So I don't want to see these fights right after a good hit. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and there's also that hierarchy system too. Like if you're gonna hit somebody like Letang or Mark Stone, you're gonna get like you also know that you're gonna have people stick up for your captains or your pseudo captains or the leaders in your room on and off the ice. That you're asking for trouble, but I'd still take it. I'd still love to.
I mean, you could just whisper in the guy's ear that his numbers. We've got his number, and he's going to pay for that. But it is what it is, as Bertuzzi says, and I guess we'll just have to live with it. We're not gonna change the game. Okay, book of the week. This week, book of the week. I just read this for the second time. We're gonna have this guy on pretty soon. I'm gonna interview him in a week or two, and really looking forward to talking to Kelly Rudy, calling the shots, ups, downs, and rebounds. My life in the great game of hockey. So very good read with Kirsty McClellan Day, and we're going to talk to her as well. Not soon, but she's agreed to be interviewed. So
that's great.
We'll have her on eventually one day. She's written a lot of books. She wrote Theo Fleury's book, and she's also done a bunch more. So looking forward to talking to her. Be a great convo.
Let's see if we can get Theo on and talk some conservative politics with him.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Not.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a non-political show, Tone. So, okay, we're going to let everybody watch the part 2 of Perry Lefko's interview. So, just as entertaining as the first half. So, and then he gives us a hard time about keeping him a little too long. So, enjoy. Do you think you'll ever write your life story, Perry?
Yeah, I've tried to do it a few times, but there's a lot of
because I think it would be an interesting read.
you talk about the relationship you had with my dad, right? I think that I mean, I had a decent relationship with my parents and a brother and a sister, but what I find is when you talk about some person killed their father or killed their mother, right? How could they possibly do it? I think the way you develop as an individual is the way you're brought up, and that your harshest critics are going to be people that you live with day to day. And like I said, whether it's a chemical thing or whether it's just personality, and sometimes it's great. I'm totally behind my kids. I always want them to do what they want to do. And I encourage them all the time to pursue your dreams. Because if you don't, there's going to come a point in time where you're going to say, I wish I would have done that. So when I was growing up, I told my parents, I want to be a writer. They're telling me you should do this, you should do that. And I just said, I don't want to do that. I know what I want to do. And, when I was trying to get into Ryerson and didn't get in right away, and they were telling me to go to university, I said, I don't want to go to university. I don't want to waste time. I want to go to Ryerson and become a journalist. So whatever it is in life, you will be shaped by the people in your own family or grandparents or whatever it is, because they're the ones that see you all the time, not the people that you go to school with. That's just, school is difficult enough, with people, bullying and all that stuff. But if you can't get that appreciation from your own family, and I'm not saying it didn't necessarily happen maybe the way it did with you, but, to sit down for me and go through a lot of stuff, I don't know if cathartic would be the word I would use, but it would be probably be very shocking to to people who don't know a lot of stuff in my personal life. I've never really shared some of the stuff. I mean, my wife knows all about it, but
yeah, that's what I said about my book when I released it. I said, this is a scary thing because I really left myself out there. People are going to find out stuff that they didn't know before.
Yeah. My father passed away a few years ago. She would say to me, I can't wait to see the book that you're going to write about us. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait some time if I do that whole story. Right. Because, obviously it's going to involve growing up and a whole bunch of other things. Right. But, I wouldn't want to really tar and feather my mother or my father in print, because it wouldn't be fair to them. Right.
So, and it's going to be out there forever. So.
Yeah. So if I'm going to be bold enough to do it, I better do it for a reason. Right. Because I felt maybe some of the things that I went through, someone else, like Eddie said, someone could benefit from it. But it's one thing. It's one thing to have to go through cancer. It's another thing to have to go through something that may be so trivial, but it effectively shaped your life, mentally or emotionally.
Of course.
I was just going to say that comparison to that, your Eddie O comment about exactly not cancer, but we all have those issues that we all went through as kids and family and extended family and things like that, that all of a sudden somebody reads that, and how many would-be writers, and you found a way to work your way through that and found your way here. And that's and it's funny, you just said or alluded to the fact you're worried about not doing it, or your choice not to do it, kind of as my dad would say, opening up the kimono. That part of you, when you were alluding to people not wanting to write that book, it's almost like you had that same hesitation, like, oh, here we go, I'm going to open this up to the world. And there's probably a real natural hesitation to doing that. But I mean, everybody has a story, as cliche as that is, but your story would be relatable. Like, even as you were talking about the newsroom, the early on, that's like a dressing room. You didn't play sports or whatever, but that was no different than a dressing room, amateur, pro, like Jerry played, or things like that. So there'd be an interesting read for sure.
Well, I was a rookie at the London Free Press sports camp for a summer, right? And like I said, that chapter would be hilarious, because
that'd be magic.
It was just so much fun to actually be involved in it, right? And then if I was to actually do it, I'd probably put down some notes. And then, Jerry, if you want to do a story about me, I'll have you interview me, and you can get all the details, right? Because that really would be a chore for me to and probably what I a lot of times I do is I just write notes. So I'm going into the next chapter. Here's what we're going to be talking about. And I send it to the personality I'm working with. So you know exactly what we're talking about today. You have some time to think about it as opposed to just, okay, today we're talking about this, right? You know, like in school, okay, today we're having a pop quiz, right? I wasn't ready for it, right? So that's a key part of when I do this stuff with these people. I want them to be prepared for what it is we're going to be talking about, and always feel like when I go in there, I was talking to my wife before and saying like, my wife can go into any situation, any place where she's seeing new people, and it's easy for her to talk to people, right? I can talk to people one-on-one, but I was at like a banquet last night. I was just sweating bullets before I even got in it, right? Because she says basically you have to find out something about that person that they like, so they're talking about themselves, and that's the way to get people to open up. But for me, like I said, unless I really feel comfortable in the situation, I'm not comfortable to even really want to talk. And people say, "Yeah, but you're a writer." I go, "Well, it's got nothing to do with anything, right? You know, it's your inherent personality."
Your wife and I find it easy to get other people talking about themselves because then we don't have to talk about ourselves. It's
But
easy to
the
avoid that.
the thing with me is I want to tell everybody, I'm a writer. I'm a writer. So we go, wow, you're a writer, right? But okay, what? So this guy's a plumber, big deal. Like, you're no important than me. But, you know, I'm trying to just rely on what it is that I feel I'm most comfortable talking about. And that's about writing, not necessarily about me, but the writing and what books I've done and that. Because people, you know, likelihood is you're going to go into a party or go into like a banquet last night. Well, how many people? These people are all in the automotive industry. A lot of them are general managers. How often are they going to meet someone that's an actual writer? So that's my entrance into the conversation, where they're just a bunch of managers at the table talking about, you know, that car that you sold, what's going on with this and that, right? So I said to him afterwards, or fairly early into when I was sitting down, I said, "You guys better watch what you say, because I'm writing something about this, and I can include what you said," right? So just a kind of an icebreaker, for lack of a better expression. Right?
Are you a Ford or Chevy guy?
Yeah. So
Are you a Ford or Chevy guy?
neither. Who's a Ford or Chevy guy? What is this, domestic? Who buys domestic cars? Like, I'm a Mazda guy. I've been a Mazda guy for as long as I can remember. But
there you go.
Are you a Ford guy?
I'm a Ford guy. Yeah.
That's unfortunate. What about you, Jerry? What are you?
I'm a Mitsubishi guy.
Import, Craig. Come on, man. This is like.
I actually use my truck. I actually need a truck to.
Is it a Ford truck or a car?
Ford truck.
Okay, you should have said that. Okay, it's a truck. If you want to buy a truck.
This is not a Matchbox size body here. I need a truck to fit in.
That's great. My son's got a Ram 150, I think, that he bought, or 1500, like years ago.
Yeah.
He just wanted to buy that truck. So, okay, where are we going to put it in the driveway? We got like 2 cars here. Where are we going to put this thing? And it was like a headache, but he always wanted to have that truck. He buys it to give him like a Ram hat, and it's like he's so proud of that, right? But that's. Even though he really wasn't working in heavy machinery at the time, it's just he had to have that truck. Yeah. So now when he moves on to Alberta, everyone there is driving a pickup truck. So it's like, what do you mean you're driving a Mazda here? This is like Alberta. Nobody drives a Mazda.
My wife's last name is Ford, so yeah.
She's no way in any related to Rob Ford or Doug Ford, is she?
I doubt it. Most of her relatives are in England. But
you never know. There could be, you got to go on your history and find out that you're related to the Premier of Ontario or the former the former mayor of Toronto.
Well, every once in a while she'll ask me if I want to drive a Ford. I say if I do, I'll call Craig.
There you go. Right? Have you driven a Ford or is it Chevy lately? What is the line? I forget. I think it's a Ford, isn't it? Yeah. But no, this guy that I went to last night that all these dealerships. First dealership he got was a Honda, and that was back in '70. They were new to the market, so he went to all these other dealers and said, "Hey, I want to open up a dealership." Forget it, right? Like the domestic cars were the cars of choice, and along comes Honda. So some guy says, "Okay, I'll let you have a dealership," because they're looking for people to have dealerships. You have to make a presentation, but you know how hard it probably is now to get a Honda dealership. It's actually, from what I understand, it's pretty hard to get. You can buy one Ford dealership, but it's pretty hard to get two, right? They're pretty particular about, no, we're not giving away all these dealerships, so you can start building them up. Now you get one, that's it. But
Well, I remember you had to have a self-worth of $1 million to get a Blockbuster franchise. So I can imagine to get a Honda dealership, you have to be multi millionaire.
To me, it's never been a problem. I just walk in there and go, here, I'm a best-selling author. I go, well, that person over there is not a best-selling author. You guys are going to get treated the same. Okay. So
You've read my stuff in the Canadian Auto Review.
there you go. Right. And that thing is kind of funny. Like, I had to reinvent myself so many times because after I left the Sun, it was the wrong reason I left anyway. But, I gravitated into the automotive world. I didn't know anything about it. And I just met someone. It was purely coincidental. I was working in Elections Canada doing the early voting, and a guy walked up to me, and I was taking the license, your card, right? And he said, Norris McDonald. Are you Norris McDonald, the auto writer? He goes, yeah. I go, I'm Perry Lefko. I go, yeah, I know who you are, right? He says, listen, if you're ever looking for any writers, let me know, right? So a month later, he calls me back with an assignment, and I'm going, oh my God, how am I going to write this? I don't know anything about this, right? But Norris has become one of my closest friends and definitely a mentor, because he could see in me the passion I have for writing, and he could see, okay, just give this guy some time and he'll be able to figure it out, which I did. So like whenever I have a problem, whatever type of problem it is, like maybe I have a problem with an editor or whatever, I'll go to him and, can you give me some advice? And he's been talking about doing his autobiography for a long time. I said, Norris, come on. And he doesn't know how to start. I said, Norris, this is what we're going to do. Tomorrow you're going to get up at 9 o'clock. You're going to commit yourself to 1,000 words, or maybe just start off with 100 words, right? Don't think about the book. Just think about something really small. In other words, don't think about the marathon. Just think about training for like 6 kilometers today. Because if you think about the big picture, you're going to get overwhelmed. And I only compare that to like what it's writing a book. It'd be compared to anything else. If you look at the marathon, I go, oh, how am I going to do it? Right. Well, don't look at the marathon. Just look at something simple we're going to do tomorrow and develop your confidence. And once you start getting into the routine, it'll take care of itself.
Yeah.
You'll end up running a marathon and say, I'm never going to run it again, which is my brother-in-law said, never again. Okay?
The longest trip starts with a single step. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about teaching?
I did teach a course. It was on sports writing, and it was about 10 years ago at the University of Toronto Continuing Education. My brother had told me about some people that were there, and I pitched this idea about doing a course about sports writing. And this is like way ahead of its time. Like there was nothing like it. We ended up like 7 people who signed up for it. And I had an idea, because I know I'd never be able to stand up and talk for 90 minutes. I would teach for like 45 minutes, and then afterwards I'd bring in somebody from the media, somebody I know. Totally. One time I brought in Elliot Friedman. It wasn't Elliot Friedman now. It was Elliot Friedman back then, but people still knew who he was. So it was like added value. I can't believe it. We're going to have to hear from, Elliot Friedman tonight. And I said, okay, I want you to listen to what he's saying. Then afterwards, I want you to write about it. And what did he say? And that was your assignment. So it worked out pretty well. Like I said, there were 7 people in the class. I think one may have ended up becoming a writer, but there were some that wanted to get into sportscasting or whatever. And I said, it doesn't matter that you're going to be writing about sports. At the end of the day, your writing is your writing, and you've got to have quality writing, because writing is so important that you've got captains of industry that can't write. They have somebody do their speeches because they can't write. But if you know how to write, you know how to write well, then you'll be able to be a great broadcaster, a great writer, person on the radio, whatever it is you choose to be. But you better know how to write, because if you don't, people notice it. And then I said, and you'll become like every other hack, no pun intended, right? That wants to be a sports broadcaster. And you're going to say, oh, this guy, last 27 innings, he's had like 27, shutouts and blah, 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 blah. Okay. That's what it is now. It's just spitting out statistics. It's all about metrics, which the word metrics didn't even exist when I first started out, in writing, but that's what it's become. And, every once in a while you'll see a sportscaster and you go, that guy's good, right? Because he knows how to talk, he knows how to write. He's not just blasting out statistics.
My mom was a big grammar English. She'd always correct us. Like if we wrote anything, and still does to this day, you send her an email and at the end she'll go, English teacher, use this comma or use this or whatever. And what a great lesson, as you were saying, like just those habits. There's nothing that grinds me more than people that short type texts. Like somebody asked me last week, why don't you use voice to text? And I'm like, I can't punctuate it the way that I want to. I can't write it the way that I want to write it. And that's why the way that I'm hearing you talk about writing, and like, I think you'd be a great teacher. Like, I think it'd be interesting to see you go back and teach.
I think I could do it, and I probably may try to enter into that again. I just have to put together a presentation for whoever it is, some university or college or whatever, right? And, again, that was just like writing a book. I had to put together my outline and know what I could do and know what I couldn't do. And what I couldn't do, I'd get someone else, like I said, bring in someone else as a guest speaker for 45 minutes. And everyone was happy, right? And I was happy because I didn't have to stand up and talk for 90 minutes because I don't know what it's like to be a school teacher and have to come in there and talk to an audience that does not care what you are talking about. Yeah. So when I'm coming in there, they want to be there, right? They want to hear about what it's like to become a sports writer. They want to hear what it's like to become a broadcaster or whatever. And I'm telling them, it's sportscasting. We're going to dummy this down. We're going to call it writing because it's just strictly writing. And either you're going to be a good writer or you're not going to be a good writer. And if you're not going to be a good writer, you'll be like everyone else, right? And yeah, you want to learn about punctuation? We're going to teach a lot about it here in this class. We're going to teach about why you don't need to put a comma after every and, or whatever, right? So it's like, I've had editors who threw in commas and I'm like, what are you doing, right? And then I'd send it back. They throw the comma back in there, right? And it's such a small little thing to anybody, but if you're a writer and you see bad punctuation, bad grammar, just things, it's annoying. Okay, so
like don't make sure you properly spell Calvillo, right?
Yeah, and here's a story about Anthony Calvillo. I was working for the Canadian Football League in 2007, and it's the Grey Cup. And the artist Nelly Furtado,
Yeah.
Okay, so she's the halftime act, and she comes in, I believe it was like on a Saturday night, and she's going to do a dress rehearsal. And I walk into her locker room. I can't remember whether she wanted me or I went in there, right? But she's saying, who are the stars of the game? I go, well, the quarterback from Montreal, Anthony Calvillo, he's a big deal. And this other guy, blah, blah, blah. She does her song the next night. I can't remember what it was, but instead of saying Steve Nash, she says Anthony Calvillo. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Like she picked up on what I was saying, right? And was it Man Eater? One of those songs, right? That she had, right? But I mean, that was pretty cool. I got to sit there with Nelly Furtado. At the time, she was a big, big deal. I mean, if you ever want to talk to her right now, I could probably just have somebody call her up and I can go meet her. I don't think she's. Having said that, she's had a few hit singles, right? And a lot of people have never had any. So, congratulations.
She's got a new album coming out.
Yeah, I actually think I heard a song the other day, and I thought, wow, that sounds different. But yeah, she's coming back into the picture. Okay, here's you asked me about the Donald Trump thing. I think we talked about that off air, right? So, I'm writing this book about Doug Flutie, and I said basically, I'm going to contact a lot of people you played with or had some impact or connection to your career. And I wanted them to talk about you. Okay, whatever, right? So Donald Trump owned the New Jersey franchise, United States Football League. So I called up I said to my wife, hey, what if I tried to get a hold of Donald Trump? She said, take a shot, right? What's going to happen? She's not going to want to do it. You won't be able to get through. So I called up the Trump Towers and I said, I'd like to speak to Mr. Trump. They connect me to his executive secretary. And I said, I'm writing a book about Doug Flutie and, Mr. Trump owned the team that Doug Flutie played for. Is there any chance I can interview him? So she says, leave it with me. And about 3 weeks later, the call came that he wants to do it. And he's going to be like Friday at 9:00 in the morning, but you have to send us a bunch of questions ahead of time so he knows what you're going to ask him. So 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm upstairs. I got a fax machine at that point. The phone's ringing, right? And Perry, yeah, Mr. Trump's on the phone, and we start talking, right? The very first question I asked him, he went off on a tangent, but had nothing to do with the question. So when that happens now politically and people are asking him questions and he says whatever he wants, I said, that's what happened, right? So it was 15 minutes. I thought we were going longer. The secretary said, I'm sorry, but Mr. Trump has a meeting to go. And I go, thanks very much. I appreciate it, right? So I'm taping this conversation. I'm hoping like nothing went wrong, like my tape recorder will work, because it's happened many times I've interviewed somebody and the tape recorder didn't work, right? So got it. I ran outside. My wife was there in the playground with the two kids, or like 3 or 4, whatever they were, right? I said, I got it. I got the interview, right? And it's in the book, right? There's quotes from Donald Trump. And that's why I say, like, how many people have had a chance to interview someone who became president of the United States? That's the joy, the fun of being a writer who's writing books, even doing articles. You can call somebody up and say, hey, would you want to talk to me? And if they say yes, it's like, can you believe it? I got to talk to this person, right? And I actually have proof of it. So if anybody says, you never interviewed Donald Trump, I'll go, here, look, page 146. There it is, the quote from him, right? It didn't invent itself, okay? So, yeah.
Do you still have the audio?
No, that's I was using the micro cassettes, which I don't even think exists anymore, right? But no, that's always been my regret that I didn't keep those tapes. I don't know, maybe in retrospect, it would have been great just to have it, just to play that tape. Right?
Sure.
Here's my interview with Donald Trump. Here's the way he sounded. Right? So,
yeah. Going back to the Eddie O book.
Man, you're really sticking to the script here, man. You got to learn
I've got notes, man.
Improvise. I'm not Donald Trump. Don't ask me too many questions, man. Like,
no,
you got to roll with it. Improvise, man.
Your executive secretary said you'd answer all my questions. So.
My executive secretary doesn't work for me anymore, because I said to her, first of all, this thing isn't going to be an hour and 20 minutes. I think I've talked more with you than I've talked to my wife since we've been home today, right? But
don't worry, this is going to be heavily edited down to like 12 minutes. So
is it really? Okay, well, I don't want to talk anymore. Okay, like, because I'm going to put this on Facebook. Here's my interview, right? Here's me. Here's what I look like. Here's what my head looks gigantic, and these guys, they had like little tiny heads because they had their screens 8 miles away. I was close.
Yeah. No.
And I don't wear glasses all the time. I wear them for reading, but I found I like them. So I thought I'd be like you guys and look really intellectual with glasses.
This is the only time I wear glasses too.
No.
I wear them for reading, where I'm not reading anything, but you are, Jerry, because we're going to go back to those 2 pages of questions. I hope you're not going to ask me about the first time I went on a date, because that'll be in the book, but I don't think we have to talk about it now.
Okay. So
here we go. You're going to ask me a question about the Eddie O thing. Go ahead.
This is where we order another round of beers.
Yeah. Out of high school on your first date.
Why did you wait so long to ask me that? That would have been, holy cow, I can't believe it. The first question is the first girl I ever went out with. That's incredible.
The Eddie O book. It really affirmed my opinion that Mike Keenan is just an absolute dick. Like, Eddie O was really hard on him and really ripped him pretty good. But Kyprios didn't. He kind of glossed over it. He said Keenan was tough. That was about it. He really gave it to some guys, but he didn't really go into too much detail. Was there any Keenan stories that didn't make the cut?
No, basically the Keenan story we're referring to is Keenan standing in front of the team there, right? He's pointing, you're going to be my first, on the power play. You're going to be my starting goalie. You're going to be my right winger. And Eddie, you're going to be, and he says right then and there, I knew that was toast, right? Like I didn't have any kind of, he had no interest in me, right? As far as like Nick was a different type of personality, because first of all, Nick was a fighter, right? So he was pretty tough. And I'm not saying Eddie wasn't tough, but the fighter, if a coach is there at the time anyway, they want some guy that's gonna go out there and fight and make an impression or do something. So Keenan knew that. And yeah, Nick was sitting next to, I forget which player it was. I'm pretty sure it was a European player, maybe a defenseman. and he just chewed him up. And the defenseman comes back to him like, just relax, man. It's okay, right? And yeah, there was. I think one of the stories in the book was that Eddie is frustrated with Keenan, decides he's going to go into his office and find out, get some answers. So he asks him some questions, and the first thing Keenan says to him, "What about those shoes you're wearing? Where'd you get those shoes?" So it's like,
are those alligator?
Yeah, those are alligator shoes, right? So it was funny, right? And all of a sudden, again,
See you
Eddie knows,
later,
like,
alligator.
I have no say. I have no my name, my body, my existence does not include him, or it is not in his world, right? But anyway, I mean, like, it's funny that Eddie became. This is a little fact here, which you may or may not know, but Sidney Crosby's first coach was Eddie O. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Mario Lemieux came back to play again after his cancer scare because Sidney Crosby was on the team, and I think Mario owned a piece of the team, so he felt like I had to come back to establish value. People are going to see me, and Sidney was living with Mario for a year or two, right? So that and then he was the coach, right, for like 20 games or something like that, and that's a little thing that he had in his career as a coach for a year and a bit.
Yeah,
not bad.
Yeah,
I remember when Mario came back, and Eddie was quoted in the paper, said, "I've just become twice as good of a coach."
Yeah, and also a lot of the coach is not only he's playing on the team, again, he's the owner of the team.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's not a lot of players that in their lifetime could say that. The guy sitting in the locker room, the coach owns the team, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think he did say something in the book about, went to Mario's place after he got fired, and Mario just kind of explained it to him. I think, if I remember, that was in the book or something to that effect. But, I get he was smart enough to realize.
Yeah. Both Kyprios and Olczyk refer to the same game in the 93-94 season, a game against the Islanders that apparently was a TSN turning point of their season for some reason. Like they hadn't won in the island
long time,
island in a long time, and they gutted out a win where Keenan was kind of pulling the goalies and playing games and whatnot, and so it really put them on the road to the success of that season. Now, with both of them referring that one game in each book, did that happen organically, or did you kind of?
No, I think they just mentioned that the rivalry between the Rangers and the Islanders, this is going back 1994, even before that, right, was so intense because the Rangers hadn't won the Cup since 1940, and the Islanders fans all 1940. It was the chant, right? The Rangers, what are they going to do, right? So finally, and if you recall about the Edmonton Oilers when they were playing, the Edmonton. And I forget which one it was. Maybe it was before Edmonton finally, beat them. It's Stanley Cup. They won it, and they walk by the Islanders dressing room, and there's all these guys. They're all like, they're 83. Dead. Yeah, they're dead because these guys gave it all, and then the young Oiler players realized, okay, this is what it's going to take, right? So, so the Islanders, I forget which year they came into existence, but the Rangers have been around forever, and the Islanders have total domination. So to finally beat the Rangers, or to finally beat the Islanders, was kind of a turning point, I would say, and in looking at their evolution towards winning the Stanley Cup.
That'd be like a lot of teams, or it'd be like Vancouver out here beating Chicago. That was a big thing.
Yeah,
go for it.
No, I would say just like what was the was it Boston and Vancouver where they lost in the seventh game, something like 3-0?
Yeah, thanks, Perry, for bringing that up.
Okay, well, it's like
thank you.
I'm sure Vancouver, people.
It's not a sore point at all.
Well, the people that were around them, the players, not so much the agonizing fans who still can't believe it, probably would have got something out of that series, right? And I'm trying to remember, was Luongo the goalie there?
Yeah, Luongo.
It was like 3-0 or something like that, right? And who was the coach? Couldn't have been Keenan, was it him?
No, it wasn't Keenan. It was Alain Vigneault.
Okay, so I don't have any Elaine Vigneault stories. Okay, sorry to disappoint you, right? But
Yeah, just the thing about that Stanley Cup final was that since that time, like Boston, the whole time up till now has been great. They've had great teams. They've gone to the final, I think, 3 times, and the Canucks just go into the toilet every time that they go to the Stanley Cup final. They just
Praise be.
become
Praise
terrible.
be. Amen.
It's
Yeah.
like, but yeah, it just goes to show you, how important stable management is, and having the right people in the right positions, because they've gone, that consistency that Boston shows is just incredible. I mean, I can't name another team that's done that.
Well, if you think like as a Canucks fan, like you're really hurting, and I brought up a bad memory, why don't you go talk to some of these Leaf fans who keep saying
Oh, I know.
1967, like that's. But by the way, when you were talking, I just thought of this great story that was in Nick's book, okay? Because that's the book right here, Nick Kiprios, right? If you haven't read it, there it is, right? Look how serious he looks. Like I'm saying, Nick, lighten up, man, right? He says the story after they won. After they won the Stanley Cup, Mark Messier calls him up one time and says, "What are you doing today?" He says, "I'm going to get a haircut." He says, "Well, how would you like to go? I think guys would like to go throw on some hang out with the New York Yankees." Okay, I can get my haircut another time, right? So there they are hanging out with the New York Yankees in the clubhouse, right? And they're getting to see and experience, what it's like for these baseball players. And that's the thing that Nick talked about, how winning that Stanley Cup was currency that he could use wherever. Now, Nick Kiprios is a fighter, right? Having said that, he played in the last game, and he was the one that took the Stanley Cup and walked over to the boards and showed it to some fans, right? Who were the true Blue Ranger fans, right? So there was, like Nick got to experience it being actually on the ice. Eddie got to experience it from the press box. But having said that, in their own little way, every single guy. I love this, man. I got to figure out how to use all this technical stuff, right? Anyway, they experienced it in their own way, right? So they have that memory for the rest of their lives, and whatever Mike Keenan did or didn't do is irrelevant, right? Because that's their story, that's their memory, and nothing. See, Eddie's smiling a bit, right? And the funny story about this is, I'm going to say it, and if Eddie hears it, right, he'll be mad at me, right? But Eddie decided he wanted to hire a photographer to do the cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he sent me back like 226 like images, right?
The raw photos,
basically the same, like with a net and him standing by the net or whatever, right? So when the publishers found out about this, they said, "You know what, Eddie, we're going to hire a photographer. We're going to get some really good pictures of you." And that's a great picture, right? Because it's really the color, the scheme that's used in it. It is great, right? And that's, look at that. It's beautiful.
It looks like him on TV.
But it's the black. It's kind of like the Blackhawks color, right? There's the black. White,
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It was brilliantly done, right? And you know what? I've probably seen it a million times. I just realized now that the color scheme they used was pretty brilliant. Yet, how many people are actually going to notice it? They're not going to really notice it. But,
no.
That's that's a publisher there. When you're self-publishing, you're doing that all on your own, right? And and again, if I'm going to do it with this book I'm working on right now, I'm sending it off to an illustrator designer, right? Because that's what they do. And I'm smart enough to realize that's not my strength. I'll find somebody that'll do it. We'll pay them whatever it's going to pay them, right? And they'll send the files. Like, Jerry, I'm going into an area I don't even know. We're going to send the files off to Amazon or whatever publisher we use, Friesen in Winnipeg, whatever it is, right? We're going to send the files off to them. They're going to put it all together. Then they're going to come back to us. They're going to send us like a PDF, as I understand it, as opposed to the actual book. We're going to look at it. We're going to see if there's any mistakes and point out what the mistakes are, send it back to them, and then boom, then it goes off, and it's being published. Whereas, it's print by demand, basically, right? So if people want to buy your book, they go to Amazon, they see that book, and I want to buy it. And when it's when it's a publisher, they're going to crank out like 5,000 copies to start off with, whatever it is, right? So if there's mistakes in there, those mistakes are going right through because they can't stop it at that point, right? They can't just stop the run, okay? Mistakes get through all the time. It's just, it goes through so many different hands that mistakes get through, or whatever is the actual reason why it happened. I'm reading a book right now and I'm seeing the typos, right? Because it just happens, right? So you have to realize it's nobody's fault. It's just part of the whole process.
You ever find yourself qualifying a book and like almost pointing out something that you're not happy with it? Somebody goes, "Oh, I loved your book," and you're like, "Oh, that's great, but I would have done." Do you stay away from that, or do you, in that almost self-deprecating way?
I probably don't, because if I did, it'd probably go crazy. You know, it's tough enough writing a book and then to be your own critic. Like, I'll let someone else criticize it or let someone else praise it. But for me to sit there and go, like I told you, Jerry, before we started this, I look at Eddie's book. There's 100 pages I could probably cut out right now, right? Because I overwrote it. Now, I'm the only one that knows that.
Right.
Eddie wouldn't care, right? Neither would the publisher, because they basically let it go. But other publishers, you know, they like to look at it and say, like, I know a guy who wrote a book who was like 160,000 words. That is like beyond astronomical. Like,
Wow.
80,000 words would work out to be somewhere around 300 pages or whatever it is, right? So you're talking about a 600. He hands it into the editor. They go, we're going to have to chop off 80,000 words. I saw the book in its earliest form, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. Like, I mean, it was funny because it was a book written by a broadcaster in Toronto. Big League Babylon was the name of it. And John Gallagher, it was basically sex, drugs, and rock and roll of a sports broadcaster. He put some stuff in it that never got into the light of day because he would have been sued 10 times every which way. But I thought it was a super funny book, right? You know, and talking about going like to the grotto, you know. how often does that happen in a sports book? It doesn't, right? But yeah.
Have you got a favorite autobiography?
I would say
Memoir of Hockey Nobody.
Well, I was going to say that, but you interrupted me. Okay, so yeah. Have I have a favorite autobiography? You're asking me one?
Yeah. Do you have it?
Yeah, I have this one here, right? And I have this one from Eddie Olczyk, right? So those are my favorite autobiographies. But realistically, Andre Agassi's book that came out many, many years ago, he wrote it with, I think it was like a writer for Sports Illustrated, one of these guys. The most brilliant book I've ever read as an autobiography, because it just really got into the heart of like how much this guy hated being a tennis player and how much he hated having to go to work every day and practice for 8 hours a day. And you would think, wow, this guy was one of the best in the world. Like, was it really that agonizing to do it? And he laid it all out there. And it was, again, smart enough to realize Andre Agassi didn't write that. So he may have given the guy a basis for it. And then the guy really, really manufactured it into that type of book. So, you know, at the end of the day, when people said, you know, the interview says, you know, why did you write that book? Well, the reality is the celebrity didn't write that book. And in the case of Donald Trump, he didn't even write the book, right? You know, one of those, I forget the name of it off the top, but it was like one of his famous books, right? So,
The Art of the Deal.
The Art of the Deal, right? So, the co-writer, who may or may not have his or her name on the book, has done a lot of the work and has done a lot of the writing. And, you know, at the end of the day, the person who's being written about won't say, I didn't do any of that. You know, there was just a bunch of interviews that were cobbled together into a story. No, this is why I wrote it, and this is why I'm a writer now, right? Well, they're not a writer. And, you know, I'm not an actor. I'm not a hockey player, right? So I understand what I did. And I also understand that people didn't buy the Eddie Olczyk book or the Nick Kiprios book because Perry Lefko wrote it. Like, they don't care. They read it because there's Eddie O stories and Nick's stories. And again, I'm happy with that, right? Because it was my idea. And at the end of the day, I know what I did and I'm happy with what I did. But I also know you got to know your role. And my role is not to be the guy that's front and center. My role is to be like the bodyguard, like the guy standing off to the side while that famous person, that is your role. Your role is to be a part of the process, but not to be the front and center person when all is said and done. And are we finished with the 2 pages now, or are we going into the outtakes now? Or are we almost done with this? I'm looking at
I love it.
an hour and 40 minutes. I thought this was going to be like 10 minutes and we're out, right? So I'm missing some. I wanted to watch the CFL game tonight. Maybe the only person that wanted to watch it, right? But
we kind of went over, but no, Perry.
Okay, you're fired. It's Jerry, okay? My name is Jerry, okay?
Yeah.
Jerry Pericles.
Pericles.
There you go. And by the way, if Nick Kipros, you interview him and you go along with this, you better cut it down. You better edit this, okay? You better get it. You get 20 minutes with him, and that's it. 15 minutes with him, and that's it. You're not getting an hour and 40 minutes. Okay, like I could have written a book in this hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Some kind of treatment.
Very
But it's okay. It's okay because for a guy who wrote this book, this is it. This is the memoir of a hockey nobody who's now written a second book, which is a fictional book.
Yeah.
And okay, here's the question everybody else asked me: so what's your next book, right? So what is your next book? Are you writing something right now, or are you in hiatus, as they say in the film world?
No, I've got the third one on the way. It's got a working title of Friday Mike. It's a thriller with a supernatural bent to it.
That's fantastic, because my book is now going to be an hour and 42 minutes. Okay. The time I spent talking to you guys when I could have written a book, right? So it's an hour and 42 minutes on your time, my time. Okay.
Yeah. Well, Friday Mike is going to be an hour and 42 minutes shorter now. So
yeah. So you said you're gonna whittle this down. The finished copy will be like what, like 3 minutes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, right. And every in the 3 minutes will be pictures of your books and my books, right? And that's all it's gonna be. Right? So,
it'll just be me and Craig talking.
That's the way it should be. And Craig finally got on there, right? Okay, so it was the right tone, right? All right.
Like it.
I had that in my. I was waiting to use it. Okay. So.
You're endlessly interesting, Perry. So
Only to you.
The time just flew by. Like I can't believe it's been an hour and 45 minutes. I mean,
I can believe it. I can believe that because that's an hour and 42 minutes. I was planning on watching a football game tonight. Okay, so
it's because we went off script, Teabag.
Yeah, really. Got to stick to
go off script. That was 2 pages of questions he asked. He said, I said, are you going to wing it? No, I got a bunch of questions I have ready, right? Says, okay, all right. And I said, if it was me, and I was once working with a kid who was going to be asking some questions, and he came in there with his notes. I took his notes and I ripped them up. He says, we're going off script here. We're not going with your notes, okay? And he was like frazzled. And I said, well, that's the way it's going to be, right? You can't interview somebody with notes in front of you because you got to know you got to know them, and you've got to make it seem like you've spent time researching them, and that'll come across in the conversation. It's a conversation. It's not it's not an interview. If it's a conversation,
it's not an interrogation.
Everybody's relaxed, right? I mean, I didn't do that with Donald Trump. I didn't say, hey, Mr. Trump, about that time you had Doug Flutie on your team and Herschel Walker and all these other guys. Like, what was that all about? I didn't get that kind of informal with him. I'm really good at interviewing people because I research it and I go in there asking them questions. I'm prepared. I know the subject. I know what my job is when I'm doing it. You go into a situation, for me anyway, that you're not that comfortable with, right? Well, I'm not in control anymore. I don't know everything about you. I can't ask you a bunch of questions. And on top of all that, last time at the banquet, I'm really hard of hearing. And right behind me is the band playing. And I go, oh, God, how did I get this seat? So when it's kind of quiet, I say to the person beside me, just wanted to let you know that I'm really hard of hearing and I barely got what you're saying and I didn't get any of it while the band was playing, right? So it's whatever, right? They were a bunch of, put me with a bunch of writers, it'll be no problem, right? They're a bunch of like managers talking about their cars and leases and all that stuff, right? So anyway, that's how that went. And that party last night was about an hour and 46 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay, so it's 2 days in a row. more time talking about something than I expected to. Okay.
So you need to get to bed, is what I'm hearing.
I just need to know, like, can I go to the bathroom now? Like, can I leave the room, or when is this over? Like, tell me, this is like we're gonna finally be able to end it and say thanks a lot, Jerry, like for wasting an hour and 46 minutes of my life. Okay.
I only have 3 more pages of questions. Okay. And then
Those
you can go.
questions, if I were there, I want you to imagine right now. Here's one page. Okay, that's the first of the 3 pages that I've just squashed. Okay. So no, we're not doing any more interviewing. We're politely saying, as the second person who was involved in this podcast, and who was the first person? It was Scott Rentoul, right? Have you said right?
Rental, yeah.
Okay, and how long was that one?
Just over an hour.
You gotta learn how to interview and really like whittle it down before you have to go into the editing process, because that's more work. Okay. And the first question I would have said to Scott is, so is your hair really red? Because he's red, is he not, right? A little guy with red hair. I knew Scott a million years ago, right? So
no, he just he just kept on talking. So
he's a broadcaster. I'm a writer. There's the difference. Okay, I talk with my words, not with in front of a mic.
You're a newsroom guy. I got a lot of time for newsroom guys.
Yeah, newsroom guys. All I have to know is, okay, how long is the story supposed to be? Okay, it's not like, okay, we're going to be talking about this and we're talking about that, and there's going to be commercial breaks and blah blah blah, right?
Okay, Perry, we're going to let you off the hook, and
no, let's talk for some more. I haven't had enough to stay in an hour and 15 minutes. Okay,
let's crack 2. Let's go. Speaking of
right, we're going
to let's go.
This entire interview is now going to be made into my next book. Okay,
we're gonna let you get ready for Taylor Swift and whatnot, but
that's exciting.
As compensation for being our second guest, we're going to send you a free copy of Jack Rat Fink.
Well, don't hold it like that and then move it away. Just put it in front of your face, man.
Billboard it. There you go.
Nobody wants to see your face. They want to see your book. Okay, so that's my next rule, what I've told you about publicizing. That's rule number 3. Keep the book in front of your face the whole time, okay?
Well, Perry, what a treat. What a treat.
Yeah, it's been awesome, Perry. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say it was a treat too, but frankly, it wasn't. It was just boring. You guys bore the hell out of me, right? Don't do this with somebody more famous, or not even, I'm not famous, but when you interview Nick Kyprios, because I gave you his contact information, he said he's going to do it. You've got 20 minutes. If he says, you say, hey, can we talk a little bit longer? He says, yeah, I'm okay, right? And then when you do it to an hour, then he's going to be saying,
I think it's called a hard out. Do you have a hard out, Kipper?
Yeah.
You broadcast guys a hard out. And to me, it's just like, when is this going to end? When can I go home already?
Okay, you can sign off now, Perry.
Sign off. Leave studio.
Click on your.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's awesome.
What a great guy, eh?
What a dude.
Yeah.
That was a treat. That was great.
Yeah, he's endlessly interesting. And he could probably talk for another 12 hours. And just with all the people that he's met and the stories that he could tell and whatnot. So we'll have him on again, I'm sure, because as much as he complained about it, I'm sure I'm pretty sure that he actually loved it. So
I would think a lot of these guys, I mean, as he said, like he's selling his book, his brand, like he'll get it in front of anybody. But I gotta think for every good interview or a good hang, like I don't know if it was an interview, but it was also just a round table, sitting around a table.
Yeah, exactly.
Yakking that he's probably had the vast majority of ones weren't enjoyable. I'm sure it was enjoyable for him. So
yeah. You could tell he was having a good time.
I've spoken when you're involved, right?
Yeah, right. I've spoken to him before, and he's he has that kind of sense of humor. So yeah, it was a great interview. I really enjoyed it.
Good fella. All right, bud.
Okay, we'll be talking soon.
We'll catch up. Love you.
Love you too, buddy.
Okay.
Okay, so that's part 2, Perry Lefko's interview. Great guy. Yeah, we really enjoyed him, and hopefully we'll have him on again. Eh, Tone?
I'd like to get him on for another hour and 50 minutes. I'm sure he could. I'm sure he could talk to us that long again.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of
Yeah.
fun, and
Yeah, and the guy knows his stuff, about writing, like talking about the process of writing and how to teach, other people to write. So, that I found that exceedingly interesting.
he's an old school writer, and as we were talking old school hitting and things like that, like he's an old school writer, like that newsroom. I absolutely love that side of it and that backstory. So yeah, that was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, please hit the like button and subscribe if you can. Please share. Yeah, down below, hit the subscribe button, and we'd really appreciate it. We'd really like to get to 100 subscribers by Christmas. So if you can help us out, share, let everybody know. And yeah, next up, we're going to be interviewing Rod Peterson of the Rod Peterson Show on the Game Show Network. Great Saskatchewan boy, and he's got a lot of funny stories to tell. So we'll be looking forward to that. So that's all we got, Tone.
All right, folks, take care.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.